Hi everyone, and welcome back to this week's video diary. Later than usual this week. Last week we were early, this week we're late, but hey, that's life, isn't it? And trying to fit everything else into a busy schedule. Wow, what a really busy weekend for us. Out and about with lots to do yesterday, which is why I didn't get the diary done yesterday as I like to on a Saturday. And then today we've had a day out as a family supporting British farming with a farm open day, which was really fantastic. Lots of great stuff to see, exhibits, talks from the guys and girls that work on the farms, an insight into the butchering industry, and lots of other different bits and pieces that just really paint the picture about how much effort goes into British farming. So look, hey, the first thing I'm going to do is start with a bit of a plea, which is if you can, support British farming, because it's really important. It feeds the nation, and those guys and girls work really, really hard to put food on the table. However, that's not really the focus of what I want to talk about today. It's clearly, what else can it be about this week? And it's a look into the markets. Since the war in Iran started, we've seen real up and downs in the investing space, stocks, other assets like commodities, so things like gold and rare metals, oil, and then also in the crypto market space. They've all performed really, really differently. And if those of you that have followed this a few times might remember that I was actually quite skeptical about how stocks were going to perform in an environment where liquidity was theoretically going to be increasingly strained. I've been proven wrong a little bit. Certainly in the short term, stocks have done very well, and certainly one that is a long-term holder of index funds, in particular the American index funds, are doing really, really well at the moment. And good, fair play to them. Stocks are doing what they're supposed to do, which is rise across the markets. However, I still subscribe to that broader theory that actually a little bit of FOMO set in, certainly towards the end, and certainly towards the back end of last week, or this week just gone rather. We've started to see some of those corrections that we were perhaps expecting to see a little bit earlier on. However, I can't talk about stocks with, of course, talking about what's happening next week, which again we've spoken about a few times, but it bears revisiting. And that's that SpaceX, the company, or one of the companies run by Elon Musk, is due to IPO, so go to its initial public offering into the stock market on the 12th of June. Now, this is probably at the moment certainly the most talked about, the most hyped up IPO that certainly I can ever recall reading about. And for those of you that are watching this, again, a question to you: have you come across one that's perhaps more exciting, more talked about, and all that good stuff? And I think you'd probably have to scratch your heads to find one, and certainly I can't think of one, and I challenge you to come up with one that perhaps beats it. And the reason I want to talk about that a little bit again today, I'm not going to dive into it too much because I want to talk about other things as well, is that where there is hype, there is of course opportunity, but there are also a lot of people that are going to be left out. I'm not saying don't buy SpaceX. If you want to do it because you think it's right for you, it's your money and you crack on and do it. The only thing I would say to you is please make sure that those investment decisions are based on some really sound research. What I'm seeing at the moment, based off the research that I have done, and it's only the research that I've done, I challenge you to find me something different, is that SpaceX is, yes, it's a very exciting industry, it's a very exciting company, it's got some big projects on the horizon. It will probably be the private sector answer to a lot of North American space agency solutions, so they're going to outsource some of that contractually, and that's great, but it doesn't make it a public service. It's still a private company, and it's still answerable to shareholders. Now maybe 20 years down the line it becomes the best investment decision that you ever made, as we go to the moon, as we colonize Mars, as we do all this other stuff, and actually that investment might be worth a significant amount more. But certainly if you're coming in the shorter term and you're looking at perhaps trading in a few months to a year or two's timeline, it really does bear thinking about whether that's the kind of investment that you want to make. There are a lot of companies that will IPO, and for lots of reasons will spend a significant period of time, potentially for years, trading at a price lower than what they IPO'd at. Remember, when a company IPOs, it's priced to perfection. Question about whether all the rules have been followed in respect to, whether the rules have been rewritten so that SpaceX can be seen to follow them with respect to this particular IPO. And it's priced to perfection. Business conditions aren't really going to change all that much for them over the next few months. This isn't an industry that does small sales in large volumes. This is a company that delivers on huge, enormous, multi-billion-dollar contracts, and they don't come around every Tuesday, right? So just to really ask yourself, if the price starts to run away with itself next week or the week after, and we go from 10%, 20%, 50%, do you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if I wasn't sat here this time next week telling you that SpaceX had doubled in value. But the important note there, of course, is, and I perhaps didn't help myself with that explanation, just because it doubles in price doesn't mean it has become double the value. You just really got to ask yourself, what is the potential upside here for a company that's already coming in, and if it was already floated, it would be a Mag 7 business, so you're straight away going at the $1 to $2 trillion valuation. How much more upside is there? Discuss. No one really knows the answer to that question, but what we do know is that actually, from a price to earnings perspective, SpaceX is probably going to be really expensive, and that means that you might find that a lot of that growth, not all of it, but a significant amount of it, is already baked into the stock price, or certainly gets itself baked in there within the first couple of weeks. And then, of course, as the weeks and months go on, potentially into the next year or two, you're going to see those lock-up options expire, and people that are currently working for SpaceX will be given the opportunity to sell their shares, and they'll probably make a very tidy profit. And of course, that's going to dilute the market, the secondary market, which is what you and I are trading in as we go to the stock exchange, with more shares. And therefore, again, you tend to see, when those lock-up options expire, downward trends in price because you get large selling. That's not because people are abandoning ship and they don't trust the company anymore. That's people that have worked in the business for a very long time, taking some money off the table because it's a financially sensible thing for them to do. But look, that's SpaceX in a nutshell. Think about the potential upside, think about what could go wrong, ask yourself if it's a risk that you are prepared to take, noting that from what I can gather, the IPO shares are already massively oversubscribed. 3 guesses what's going to happen as soon as it starts trading. Real opportunity for people to make a lot of money in there if they know what they're doing in the trading space, but potentially a very tricky situation to get into if you're a retail investor and you're looking to buy and hold for a long period of time. You could be left holding a bit of a dud. No, maybe not forever, but certainly for the next 6 to 12 months or more. The next thing then, because I've spoken to a few people about this, is, again, we're still on the SpaceX at the moment, but it's with respect to trading. So day trading is very different to investing. When you're an investor, you are someone that is typically buying and holding because you have, in the case of stocks, you have researched the company and you want to become not necessarily an owner to the point that you get to sit on the board, but you want to participate in that company's journey with a view to benefit financially in the longer term. When you are trading, what the company is almost doesn't matter at all. You are making an educated guess, or certainly you'd like to think that most people are making an educated guess, based on the fluctuation of prices on a chart. So essentially candles, VWAP, whatever it is, and based on the information that's available to me on the screen right now, is the stock likely to go up or down, and by roughly how much based on the buying and selling pressure? Those people that know what they're doing and really know what they're doing could end up making themselves a lot of money in the SpaceX trade. My cautionary note to those people that are maybe thinking about getting into day trading is that the SpaceX IPO is probably, in fact, guys, it's almost certainly not the time to learn how to day trade. The vast majority, I don't have the exact statistic to hand, but because it's almost impossible to get, but I would reckon over 90% of people that get into day trading actually end up losing money over a period of time. So it's a difficult thing to crack. the last thing you want to do is take what is essentially a sophisticated gamble with money that you actually just can't afford to lose at a time where there will be an obscene amount of buying and selling pressure going on a stock. Professional day traders may disagree with me on that. I think that's a really dumb move. And the thing I would certainly say to you, if you were thinking about doing this, and despite what I've said, you're going to go ahead and do it anyway, leverage. Guys, if you really know what you're doing, and again, you really deeply understand what it is that you're doing, there's the potential to make an absolute fortune day trading on leverage, because you're essentially borrowing money to inflate your own return and then paying the original loan back with interest, right? It's not quite like that, but that is in a very simple terms how it works. But there's also a risk of you getting something called margin called, which is where the price moves too far one way compared to the nature of the buy order or the sell order that you placed on the stock, and the broker comes back and says, hey, we're going to cut your losses now, we want our money back. And that means when that happens, there is a very real possibility that you could lose everything. So the last thing you need now, if you're someone that is sat here thinking about your financial future and perhaps worrying about bills or job loss or whatever it is, and say, hey, I know, and guys, I'm not going to make this is not a made-up example. This is I know people have done this, and anyone that's been in the trading and investing space, you will know exactly what it is that I'm talking about, and you will probably know someone that's done it too. Hopefully you've not done it yourself, but chances are we all know someone that's done it. I'm really struggling financially. I've heard about this day trading, sounds pretty good. I'm going to go and get a loan. I'm then going to go and get that loan. I'm going to put it into my day trading account, and I'm going to buy or short a stock on a 5-10x leverage, because the idea being that when that goes the way that I think it's going to go, within the space of 15-20 minutes of trading, I'll have paid the loan off, I'll have paid the broker off, and I'll be sat on infinitely far more money than I ever started off with, and that will clear my credit card, it will put food on the table, it will do whatever it is that I want to do. And guys, at that point, you're setting yourself up to fail, because you're trading on desperation and you're trading on emotion. And anyone that has any knowledge of day trading will know that emotion is the enemy of a successful day trader. So for goodness sake, if you are someone that is finding themselves in that situation where things are just not quite going as you would hope they would financially, please don't get money that you can't afford to lose, leverage it up to the nines, and try and do it, change your life on SpaceX. You might get it right. And I wish you all the best. I genuinely wish you all the best if that's what you're going to do. I'm certainly not going to do it. I thought about it long and hard. I've decided I don't want to play that game. But hey, if you're going to do it, that's your call. But please understand the risk that you're taking here. Yes, you could change your life, but there's a very good chance that you won't. And there's a very good chance that you're going to make the problem far worse, because you're now left with a loan that you really couldn't have afforded to have taken in the first place, and rather than consolidate your debts and do something sensible with it, you decided to essentially go and stick it all on black, and you've lost. Hey, so that's trading, and that's SpaceX. Last thing I want to talk about very briefly, a bit of a note on the cryptocurrency market. For those of you that know, or don't know rather, I'm an advocate of crypto. I've started on the eToro platform, rebuilding a bit of a portfolio, and cryptocurrency is currently featuring very heavily in that. That's not because I'm a crypto maxi, by the way. That's just because that's where I'm seeing the value at the moment, with the exception of a couple of stocks that I've managed to pick up on what feels like a real discount. There isn't very much going for me in the stock market that I like from a value perspective at the moment. There's a few that I want to dollar cost average into, but if I'm going for a value play, it doesn't feel like it's in stocks too much, but crypto feels really oversold. And I think that's because, or certainly my take on that, is it's such a volatile asset because it's highly leveraged. Secondly, you've got 24/7, 365 trading. Thirdly, just about any man jack who's got an iPhone, a bank account, and access to the internet can get themselves on buying and selling crypto in some form or another. And that means that the liquidity can move in and out very, very quickly, especially when sentiment picks up, or, as has happened in the last few months, drops off a cliff. The war in Iran really kicked the steam out of whatever was left of the crypto industry, and it's now trading at really significant lows, and it feels to me, again, not financial advice, like a good opportunity to go and pick up on some tokens that you really believe in. And I'm going to make a separate video about the kind of things I think you should be looking for in a cryptocurrency token. But that's certainly where I'm looking. And I think just a general point to note is that, hey, look, it is down, it is volatile, but I also think that actually from a macro perspective, yes, short-term issues will always impact on price movements in cryptocurrency. A lot of data that's coming out of the US at the moment has essentially had people saying that maybe interest rates aren't going to get cut as quickly as they'd hoped they would, and clearly a lower interest rate is good for cryptocurrency, broader macroeconomic perspective, because it puts money back in people's pockets to reduce interest rates, mortgages, credit cards, all the other kind of stuff. It makes the economy more liquid. When the economy is more liquid, people generally are more willing to A, invest, and B, take more risky investments, and that's when you start to see the rises in crypto. So given everything that's happened, I think there's been a bit of selling off because of that. I also think there's been a bit of selling off because you've got either people that have decided they're going to cut their losses on some of the tokens that they have been holding. Fine, whatever, your call. But also people are selling down some other areas because they want to pile into SpaceX. And I am genuinely going to be really fascinated to watch from the sidelines about what on earth happens to this stock. It's not very often that you see a stock impact on the cryptocurrency market, with the exception of one like Strategy, but that's for another day, in the way that SpaceX has. But hey, broadly speaking, I'm still optimistic here. Really nice uptick today and yesterday. I don't think that's necessarily indicative of a massive bull run that we're about to go on in crypto. But let's be honest, guys, the world every day becomes a little bit more electronic, it becomes a little bit more technologically driven, and cryptocurrency gets adopted here, there, maybe not in ways that we would recognize it as ordinary people, but certainly at an institutional level, the systems that cryptocurrency supports and enables is there and is an active part of conversations that businesses and other organizations are using. Remember, think about the tokens that you're owning. Something like Bitcoin is essentially a store of value. It's like the modern equivalent of gold. Again, I'm not trying to make the case for one over the other, but that is the function of the token. Other tokens like Ethereum and Solana, when you are buying a token, you are essentially doing the equivalent, I think, of buying a share in the network, and as the network increases in value because it does something, again, let's not unpack what that does and doesn't do now, but it does something, it generates value, and therefore you participate in that almost in the same way as owning a share, but in a slightly different way. Hey, I'm probably going to make another video on this in and around evening of the 12th of June. There's a lot happening here, but really great to get back online, check in with people that I like to interact with. There's some fantastic sites out there, and I would encourage you to have a look. Hopefully you found this useful, a bit of an insight into what's coming up for those of you that were perhaps not very sure. I'll drop the video on the timeline, and equally, please, follow. I'd really appreciate that. If you could head over to YouTube or Substack, where I started on there this weekend, you're going to get access to all the articles that I currently produce on X for free, but also for those people that want to go a step further into paid subscription, there'll be some subscriber only content where I go a little bit deeper and offer you perhaps more value than I can do on a free site. So have a great weekend. I hope it's half as nice for you as what it is here. We've been really lucky with the weather. A really exciting week to come up. Really keen to get your thoughts and reactions, and I'll certainly be sharing mine as well. Have a great rest of your weekend. Take care.